The distress signal had been echoing through the galaxy for exactly 7 hours, 13 minutes, and 22 seconds. No one answered it. The transmission came from the research vessel Asterion, one of the Galactic Alliance's most advanced exploration ships. It had disappeared near the event horizon of the Abyss Rift, a region of warped space surrounding an unstable micro-black hole. Every civilization in the Alliance knew the rule. If a ship crossed the rift's inner boundary dot, it was already dead. The signal repeated anyway. We have 73 survivors. Life support failing. Engines offline. Rescue impossible. Then silence. Then the message started again, by the 8th hour. Every major rescue fleet in the galaxy had received it. None launched. Not because they lacked courage, because mathematics had already declared the crew beyond saving. The abyss. Rift bent gravity like glass. Navigation systems failed. Quantum communication fractured. Time itself moved unpredictably. A rescue ship entering. The rift had less than a 2% chance of returning. No government would sacrifice hundreds of trained rescuers for 73 people who were almost certainly already dead. The Galactic Rescue Council reached its decision in less than 6 minutes. Mission terminated. Survivors presumed lost. Archive the signal. Across the Alliance, commanders closed the file and moved on to other emergencies. Only one person reopened it. His name was Adrian Cross. He was 29 years old. Human. Combat medic. Not a famous captain. Not an admiral. Not even the commander of his own ship. He worked aboard an aging humanitarian rescue cruiser called Mercy Dawn, a vessel so old that newer pilots jokingly called it a museum that happened to fly. Its hull carried scars from dozens of disaster zones. Its engines rattled during acceleration. Half of its medical equipment had been repaired so many times that original factory parts no longer existed. But every scratch on that ship had been earned saving lives. Adrian preferred it that way. He listened to the final distress transmission again. Then again. Then once more. Something bothered him, not the words, the silence between them. Most people heard empty static. Adrian heard breathing. Fast. Controlled. Disciplined. Someone aboard the Asterion was deliberately timing each broadcast. Not panicking. Not surrendering. Waiting. He increased the audio gain. The bridge became quiet. There. 3 metallic taps. A pause. 2 taps. Another pause. His heartbeat quickened. He played it again. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. His captain looked over. What are you hearing? What are you hearing? 3 taps. Pause. 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 Done. Metallic taps. A pause. 2 taps. Another pause. His heartbeat quickened. He taps. Pause. His captain looked. Adrian answered without taking his eyes off the waveform. Someone's talking. That's static. No, they're conserving power. The captain frowned. You can tell that from tapping? Adrian nodded slowly. My father used to teach search and rescue teams on Earth. He always said, if trapped people are still creating patterns, they're still thinking. And if they're still thinking, they're still fighting. The captain folded his arms. The council already closed the mission. They're wrong. The probability says they're right. Adrian finally looked up. I've worked disasters for 12 years. Probability has never once held a dying person's hand. Silence settled across the bridge. The captain knew Adrian's history. Before joining the Alliance, Adrian had spent years responding to earthquakes, floods, collapsed buildings, and deep-sea rescue operations on Earth. He had crawled through broken concrete searching for children everyone else believed were already gone. He had survived avalanches, chemical fires, orbital station, decompressions. He carried scars from each one, not because he enjoyed danger, because he refused to stop searching while someone still had a chance. The captain sighed. "You know what happens if we enter the rift? We may not come back." Adrian nodded. "I know." "And you're still asking?" "I'm asking because 73 families are waiting for someone to ignore the odds." The captain looked through the bridge window at the endless stars. For nearly a minute he said nothing. Finally, he smiled. "You humans really are impossible." Adrian laughed quietly. "I've heard that before." The captain turned toward the crew. "Prepare Mercy Dawn." One officer blinked. "Sir." The council denied authorization. "I know. We'll lose our licenses." "I know. We could be arrested." The captain's smile widened. "Only if we survive." For the first time in years, the old rescue cruiser powered every engine simultaneously. Warning lights flashed across the bridge. Several systems immediately reported mechanical faults. An engineer slapped one of the control panels. It started working again. Adrian smiled. "I love this ship." The engineer grinned. "She falls apart, but never quits." Minutes later, Mercy Dawn left the safety of Alliance space and accelerated toward the darkest region in known existence. Far ahead, beyond twisted gravity and broken starlight, 73 strangers were still waiting. And for the first time since their distress call began, someone was finally coming. The stars disappeared long before the Mercy Dawn reached the abyss rift, not because they were gone, because light itself no longer traveled in straight lines. Entire constellations twisted into impossible spirals. Distant suns appeared above the ship one second, and beneath it the next. Space looked less like a universe and more like a shattered mirror. Every alarm on the bridge came alive. Gravitational shear increasing. Navigation satellites lost. Quantum compass offline. External sensors degrading. The young navigation officer swallowed hard. "We've crossed the safe boundary." No one answered. Everyone already knew. From this point forward, there were no maps. Every rescue mission sent into the rift over the last century had ended exactly the same way. No survivors. No wreckage. Nothing. The Mercy Dawn continued anyway. Its engines groaned under impossible stress. Metal creaked through the entire hull. The ship sounded almost alive, as though it knew where it was going and feared it just as much as the crew. Adrian remained in the communications station, replaying the distress signal over and over. The captain glanced toward him. "You still listening?" "I'm listening for change." "You think they're still transmitting?" "I know they are." "How?" Adrian pointed to the audio display. "The pauses are getting longer." "What does that mean?" "They're rationing power." The captain looked surprised. "They're adapting." Adrian nodded. "People who adapt haven't given up?" "Hours." Past the rift grew darker outside the observation window. Pieces of abandoned spacecraft drifted silently through distorted space. Some were Alliance vessels, others belonged to civilizations so ancient their designs were no longer recognizable. A bridge officer whispered. They all tried to leave. Nobody replied. Then a violent impact shook the Mercy Dawn. The lights flickered. Warning sirens screamed. Hull breach on Deck 4. Artificial gravity fluctuating. Engine output dropping to 62%. Engineers rushed through the corridors. The captain grabbed the command rail to keep his balance. What hit us? The sensor officer stared at the display in confusion. Nothing. Another impact, stronger this time. Adrian's eyes narrowed. No. He looked toward the front window. Nothing. Everyone followed his gaze. The darkness itself was moving. At first it looked like smoke. Then thousands of tiny fragments emerged from the shadows. Broken metal, frozen debris, entire sections of destroyed ships, the black holes. Gravity wasn't pulling them inward anymore. It was throwing them sideways, through warped space like bullets. Debris storm. Someone shouted. The captain reacted instantly. Evasive maneuvers. The helmsman fought the controls. They're not responding. They're responding. The engineer shouted from the lower deck. Just 5 seconds late. Silence. Adrian understood immediately. Time distortion inside the rift. The ship wasn't reacting when commands were given. It was reacting several seconds after. Every movement arrived too late. Another piece of wreckage slammed against the hull. The ship lurched violently. Emergency lights bathed the bridge in red. The captain cursed under his breath. We can't dodge anything like this. Adrian's mind raced. His father had once explained something during a mountain rescue on Earth. Never fight an avalanche. Predict where it will be, not where it is. He stepped beside the helmsman. Turn left. The pilot looked confused. There's nothing on the left. No. Then why? Because 5 seconds from now, there will be. The captain looked at Adrian. You sure? No, but I trust physics. He nodded toward the pilot. Turn now. The Mercy Dawn rolled sharply to port. 5 long seconds passed. Nothing happened. Several officers exchanged nervous glances. Then a massive section of an ancient battleship exploded through the exact space the cruiser had occupied moments earlier. The bridge fell silent. The pilot slowly looked toward Adrian. How? Adrian exhaled quietly. We're driving through. Yesterday, no one fully understood what he meant, but everyone understood one thing. If they reacted to danger, after seeing it, they were already dead. For the next 2 hours, the captain stopped relying on the navigation computer entirely. Instead, he trusted Adrian. Right? Right. Up? Not yet. Now. Reduce thrust? Half power. Every instruction came seconds before the danger appeared. The crew stopped, asking why. They simply obeyed. For the first time in recorded history, a rescue ship successfully crossed the outer chaos of the abyss rift. Then the distress signal changed. Instead of repeating, automatically a new voice came, through weak, exhausted, barely audible. If anyone can hear, please stop coming. The bridge froze. The voice continued. The rift isn't empty. A burst of static swallowed the transmission. Then one final sentence reached them. Something is hunting rescue ships. Every person on the bridge looked out into the darkness. For several terrifying seconds, nothing moved. Then, far beyond the twisted stars, two enormous blue eyes slowly opened, and they were looking directly at the Mercy Dawn. No one on the bridge spoke. The two blue lights remained perfectly still. They did not blink. They did not move. They simply watched. The sensor officer finally found his voice. I can't identify it. What do you mean? The captain asked. There isn't enough mass. Enough mass for what? For something that size. The display showed nothing except warped. Gravity. No engine signature. No. Radiation. No biological readings. According to every instrument aboard the Mercy Dawn, nothing existed in front of them, yet every pair of human eyes on the bridge could clearly see the enormous blue lights. Suspended inside the darkness, Adrian stared without blinking. They aren't eyes. The captain looked toward him. What are they? Reflections of what? I don't know yet. The lights suddenly vanished. Not faded. Vanished. A second later, the entire ship shuddered. A deep metallic groan echoed through every deck. Hull stress increasing. Port stabilizers offline. The engineer shouted through the intercom. Captain, something just pushed us. Pushed? There was no collision. The Mercy Dawn drifted sideways despite its engines firing at full power. Outside the window, space folded like water. And the blue lights appeared again. This time, behind them, the youngest bridge officer panicked. It teleported. Adrian shook his head. No, it moved. Nothing moves that fast. His eyes remained fixed on the distorted stars. It didn't. We're seeing different moments at the same time. Confused. Silence followed. Then realization slowly spread across the bridge. The rift wasn't only bending space. It was bending time. The crew wasn't watching the mysterious object move. They were watching several different moments of its journey all at once. The captain smiled despite the danger. I hate this place. Adrian almost laughed. So do I? Suddenly the communications console came alive. The same exhausted voice returned. Mercy Dawn. Adrian leaned forward. This is Medic Adrian Cross. We're here. A long pause, then a tired laugh. I can't believe someone actually came. What's your name? Commander Lyra Sen Asterion. How many survivors? Still 73. Adrian closed his eyes for a second. She had counted. That meant they still had organization. Still had hope. What happened? We discovered something. What? Silence. Then, the rift isn't natural. Every person on the bridge looked at one. Another, Lyra continued. We were studying gravitational anomalies. We found artificial structures, older than every known civilization. The captain frowned. Artificial? Someone built this place. Before anyone could answer, a violent pulse of gravity struck the Mercy Dawn. Every crew member was thrown against their harness. The lights failed. Darkness swallowed the bridge. Only phony emergency lighting remained. The engineer's voice echoed through the speakers. Main reactor unstable. Containment dropping. The captain grabbed the command rail. Status 40% power. We can't hold this much longer. Outside, the blue lights appeared again. Closer. Much closer. For the first time, their true shape became visible. They were not eyes. They were enormous energy lenses, embedded in the front of a machine. A machine larger than a city. Its surface was covered with scars older than recorded history. Ancient symbols glowed faintly across its armor. Huge sections were broken away, as though it had fought a war no civilization remembered. The sensor officer whispered, "My stars, it's a ship, not a warship." Not exactly. Something older, something built before the Galactic Alliance, before the Valorian Empire, before humanity had even learned to write. It drifted silently around the black hole, as though guarding it, or trapped within it. Then every speaker aboard the Mercy Dawn activated at once. Not from their communications system. From the ancient vessel itself. A single voice filled the bridge. Calm. Deep. Mechanical. Unauthorized. Rescue attempt detected. The crew froze. Identity required? No one answered. The voice continued. Failure to identify will result in termination. The captain looked toward Adrian. I don't think this thing cares about Alliance law. Adrian stepped toward the transmitter. His heartbeat pounded in his chest. My name is Adrian Cross. I am a human medic. A pause followed. Long enough that everyone wondered whether the machine had understood him. Then the ancient voice spoke. Again, human. Another pause. Species. Recognized. The bridge fell silent. Recognition. How could a machine older than every known civilization recognize humanity? The answer that came next made every person aboard the Mercy Dawn forget how to breathe. Last recorded human contact 112,000 years ago. No one moved. No one even breathed. 112,000 years. The number echoed through the bridge like a heartbeat. The captain slowly turned toward Adrian. That's impossible. Adrian didn't answer, because he couldn't. Human civilization had reached the stars less than 3 centuries ago. Recorded human history stretched back only a few thousand years. Everything before that belonged to archaeology and myth. The machine had just spoken of humans as though it had known them personally. The ancient voice returned. Identity confirmed. Human biological markers 99.7% compatible. The sensor officer stared at his display. It's scanning your DNA. Adrian stepped closer to the transmitter. Who are you? For several seconds there was only static. Then the answer came. I am Sentinel 9, final guardian of the Horizon Network. My mission remains active. The captain frowned. What horizon network? No reply. Instead, a holographic image suddenly appeared in the center of the bridge. A galaxy, but not the galaxy they knew. Thousands of stars burned with strange colors. Entire spiral arms were different. Constellations no longer existed where they should have been. The computer immediately tried to identify the map. It failed. Archive date, the machine announced. 112,406 standard years. The bridge fell silent again. It wasn't showing another place. It was showing another time. A civilization had mapped the galaxy more than 100,000 years before the present. Then the image shifted. Countless starships appeared. Not hundreds. Not thousands. Millions. They crossed the galaxy in organized formations, unlike anything ever recorded. Among them. One design made Adrian's heart stop. It looked familiar. Not identical, but unmistakably similar to the oldest spacecraft ever built by humanity. The captain whispered, "Those are human ships." "No," Adrian replied quietly. "They can't be." The machine answered him. They were. Every officer turned toward the speaker. Sentinel Nine continued. The human expeditionary civilization. Status. A pause. Then one cold sentence. Extinct. The word struck Adrian harder than any. Explosion. Impossible. Humanity had evolved on Earth. They were a young species. Everything science knew said so. The machine continued without emotion. Primary archives damaged. Historical records incomplete. Known facts remain. The hologram zoomed toward a distant region of the ancient galaxy. Human civilization achieved interstellar capability. Conflict followed. Enemy classification unavailable. Extinction event confirmed. Double quotes. Silence. The captain folded his arms. If this is true, then how are humans alive now? The machine paused. Unknown. No surviving records. Possibility. Another pause. Earth classified as preservation world. Adrian's pulse quickened. Preservation? Species continuity protocol initiated. The bridge erupted into whispers. The machine wasn't saying humanity had appeared naturally after extinction, but it was suggesting someone had deliberately protected Earth, as if it had been a final refuge, a backup. The captain looked toward Adrian. This changes everything. Before Adrian could answer, Commander Lyra's weak voice suddenly broke through the transmission. Forget the history lesson. Everyone snapped back to reality. We're dying. The bridge fell silent. The Asturion still floated somewhere inside the rift. Its 73 survivors had almost no power left. Sentinel Nine spoke again. Rescue vessel located. A glowing point appeared inside the hologram. Distance. Only 12 kilometers, yet twisted gravity made that distance impossible to cross. The machine continued. Direct approach probability of survival, 0.3%. The captain sighed. I was afraid of that. Adrian studied the hologram carefully. His eyes moved across the strings of warped gravity surrounding the stranded ship. Then he noticed something. Every gravitational wave curved around one narrow corridor. Not by accident. As if something had once traveled there repeatedly. He stepped closer. What's this? Sentinel Nine remained silent. Adrian pointed again. This pathway. It isn't random. Several officers looked at the hologram. One navigator slowly nodded. He's right. It forms a spiral, almost like a road. The ancient machine finally answered. Maintenance corridor. The captain blinked. For whom? Sentinel Nine replied in the same calm voice. For humans. The bridge became silent once more. 112,000 years had passed. Empires had risen and fallen. Entire civilizations had vanished. Yet deep inside the deadliest place in the galaxy, a path built for humanity. Was still waiting. Adrian stepped toward the hologram until he was almost standing inside the glowing projection. The narrow spiral corridor twisted through impossible gravity like a thread woven into a storm. It was barely wide enough for a single ship. The navigator studied it for several seconds. I can fly this. Then his face fell. For about 30 seconds. After that, the corridor collapses. Sentinel Nine answered before anyone else could. It does not collapse. It recalibrates. The holographic pathway shifted. Entire sections disappeared. New ones appeared elsewhere. The captain frowned. It keeps moving. Correct. How often? How often? How often? The chief has disappeared. New ones appeared elsewhere. The captain frowned. It keeps moving. Correct. Holographic pathway shifted. Entire sections disappeared. New ones appeared. Every 91 seconds, the bridge became quiet, flying through a tunnel that changed shape every 91 seconds inside a black hole was impossible, unless Adrian looked toward Sentinel 9. Something predicts the changes. Correct. You. Correct. The captain crossed his arms. And you're willing to guide us? A long silence followed. Finally, permission denied. The crew stared at the ancient machine. Reason? Current directive remains active. No unauthorized vessel may enter the horizon corridor. The captain let out a frustrated breath. So that's it? We came all this way, only to be stopped by an ancient security program. Adrian kept watching the hologram. He wasn't looking at the words. He was watching the machine itself. Something felt strange. Sentinel Nine answered every question immediately, except one. Its identity. It had hesitated. Machines didn't hesitate, unless... You've been alone for a long time. The bridge fell silent. The captain looked at Adrian as though he'd lost his mind. Sentinel Nine didn't answer. Adrian spoke again. How long since anyone came through the corridor? Several seconds passed, then 112,000. The machine stopped. 300. Another pause. 81 years. The voice sounded exactly the same, yet somehow different. Quieter. Adrian nodded gently. You've been waiting. No response. You were told humans would return someday. Still nothing. You never stopped believing they would. The bridge remained completely silent. Finally, Sentinel Nine spoke. Directive. It paused again. Requires patience. Adrian smiled faintly. My father used to say something. The captain almost laughed. Everything comes back to your father. He was usually right. Adrian looked directly at the glowing sensors of the ancient machine. You said, sometimes the fastest way to open a locked door. I send single quotes T with force. It's by reminding the person behind it why they locked it in the first place. The blue lights dimmed slightly. then brightened again. Sentinel Nine asked a question no one expected. "Human, why did you enter the rift?" Adrian answered without hesitation. "To save people." Probability of success was insignificant. "I know. Probability of your death remains high. I know. Your government ordered you not to come." "I know." The machine processed his answer. "Then explain." Adrian took one slow breath. "Because they asked for help. Nothing more, nothing less. No speech. No heroics. Just the truth." The ancient vessel became completely still. Its glowing lights faded until they were barely visible. For nearly 20 seconds, nothing happened. Then every warning alarm aboard the Mercy Dawn suddenly stopped. The violent shaking ceased. The distorted gravity outside the ship calmed. The holographic corridor widened. Sentinel 9 spoke once more. "Directive updated." The captain blinked. "What?" "Authorization granted." The crew looked at one another in disbelief. The machine continued. "Reason." A pause. Then. "Human response consistent with original Horizon protocol." Adrian frowned. "What protocol?" The answer echoed across the bridge. "No life requesting rescue shall ever be abandoned." Every human aboard the Mercy Dawn felt chills run down their spine. The words sounded familiar. Not because they had heard them, because they had lived them. Rescue workers, firefighters, paramedics, coast guards, mountain teams, disaster volunteers, different worlds, different uniforms. Same promise. Sentinel 9 slowly rotated away from the Mercy Dawn. The gigantic ancient vessel positioned itself beside the shifting corridor. Blue energy flowed through structures that had slept for more than 100,000 years. Entire sections of the rift stabilized. Gravity settled. Time distortion weakened. The impossible pathway became clear. The machine's final instruction echoed through every deck. Horizon corridor active. You now have 6 minutes. Bring them home. The captain didn't waste a single second. Helm. Full thrust. The Mercy Dawn surged forward. For the first time since entering the Abyss Rift, the ship wasn't fighting gravity. It was riding through it. Blue energy from Sentinel 9 flowed ahead of them, stabilizing the impossible corridor just long enough for the old rescue cruiser to pass. Even then, the journey was far from safe. Massive waves of distorted space crashed against the invisible walls of the corridor. Stars stretched into glowing rivers. Time flickered. On one monitor, the crew watched themselves entering the corridor. On another, they watched themselves leaving it. Neither event had happened yet. The navigator tightened his grip on the controls. "I've never flown through anything like this." The captain smiled. "Neither has anyone else." 3 minutes later, a damaged ship emerged from the darkness. The Asterion. Its once polished silver hull was scarred beyond recognition. Entire engine sections had been ripped away. One side of the vessel had collapsed inward as though squeezed by an invisible hand. Emergency lights blinked weakly through broken observation windows. Life still existed inside. Adrian immediately switched to emergency communications. "Asterion, this is Mercy Dawn." A long burst of static answered. Then Commander Lyra's exhausted voice returned. "You actually made it. We told you we were coming." A faint laugh echoed across the channel. "I stopped believing that 6 hours ago." Adrian looked toward the medical crew already preparing rescue stretchers. How many can still walk? 21? The rest? They'll need help. The captain checked the corridor timer. 4 minutes remaining. Every person on the bridge understood what that meant. There wasn't enough time. Not for 73 survivors. Not through damaged docking systems. Not while fighting unstable gravity. The engineer did the calculations anyway. His face fell. We're 37 seconds short. Silence. 30-7 seconds. Such a small number. Yet, inside the rift. It was the difference between life and death. The captain looked at Adrian. Neither man needed to speak. They were thinking the same thing. Adrian opened a private communication channel. Captain. I know. You stay with the ship. The captain smiled. I wasn't planning to. Adrian shook his head. I'm going. The captain looked directly into his eyes. That wasn't a request. It wasn't meant to be. You know the corridor could collapse while you're over there. I know. You may never get back. Adrian clipped a rescue harness onto his suit. I know. The captain sighed. I hate arguing with humans. You always lose. A small smile crossed Adrian's face. I usually do. Within seconds, the emergency airlock opened. The vacuum of space stretched endlessly before him. Between the two ships. Only 90 meters, normally an easy crossing. Inside the rift, every step had to be perfect. A safety cable attached to his harness. Adrian pushed away from the Mercy Dawn. Immediately, gravity shifted. His body twisted sideways. The stars rotated around him. For one terrifying moment, he couldn't tell which direction was up. Training took over. He stopped fighting, used the momentum. Adjusted. Recovered. He reached the Asterion's shattered hull. The damaged emergency hatch refused to open. Power failure. Adrian pulled the manual hydraulic tool from his pack. 3 heavy turns. 4.5. The hatch finally released with a loud metallic crack. Warm air rushed into space. Inside. Darkness. Smoke. Silence. Then dozens of exhausted faces looked toward him. For a second. No one moved. A young engineer whispered, "It's a human." Another survivor shook his head. "No, it's help." Adrian stepped inside. "I'm Medic Adrian Cross. I'm here to take you home." Several survivors began crying, not because they were weak, because someone had actually come. "Commander." Lara pushed herself painfully to her feet. She looked exhausted beyond words. "You ignored the council." Adrian nodded, double quotes, yes. She laughed softly. "Good." The corridor timer echoed through his communicator. 2 minutes. 43 seconds remaining. There was no time to celebrate. Only time to save lives. Adrian looked around the ruined compartment. Then made the hardest decision of his career. No one carries equipment. One officer looked shocked. Our research. Leave it? The data could change science forever. Adrian looked directly at him. Dead scientists don't publish discoveries. No one argued. For the next several minutes, the survivors formed a human and alien chain through the shattered corridors of the Asterion. No panic. No shouting. Just one exhausted step after another. Toward home. The first group reached the Mercy Dawn, with just under 2 minutes remaining. Crew members pulled the exhausted survivors aboard one by one. Doctors immediately began treating dehydration, fractures, radiation burns, and oxygen deprivation. No one stopped moving. No one wasted a second. Adrian remained inside the Asterion. He counted every survivor crossing the emergency bridge. 31, 32, 33. Commander Lyra stood beside him, refusing treatment until the others were safe. "You should go," Adrian said. She shook her head. "Captain leaves last." Adrian smiled. "That sounds familiar." She almost laughed. "It usually does." Another group disappeared through the airlock. The captain's voice came over the communicator. 59 aboard. Adrian checked his wrist display. 14 remained. The corridor timer flashed. 1 minute, 18 seconds. The old Asterion groaned beneath them. The damaged hull had finally reached its limit. Deep cracks raced across the ceiling. A support beam collapsed behind them with a deafening crash. Dust filled the corridor. One of the younger scientists froze. "I can't move." His breathing became rapid. Panic. Adrian recognized it immediately. He knelt in front of him. "Look at me." The scientist couldn't. His hands were shaking too violently. Adrian removed one glove and placed his hand gently on the man's shoulder. "Don't look at the collapsing ship. Look at me." Slowly. The scientist focused. "Good. Now breathe with me." One breath. Then another. The panic eased. The scientist stood. I'm okay. I know. Breath. Then another. The panic eased. The scientist stood. I'm okay. I know. They started moving again. The timer reached 52 seconds. The captain's voice became urgent. "Adrian, we're running out of time." "I know." Outside the damaged observation window, the blue corridor flickered. Sections were already beginning to disappear. Sentinel Nine had held the impossible together for almost 6 full minutes. It could not last forever. Another explosion shook the Asterion. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut. Automatically, 3 survivors were trapped on the opposite side. Commander Lyra reached the controls. No power. Adrian examined the mechanism. The emergency release had warped. It would never open electronically. He pulled the hydraulic cutter from his rescue pack. The battery indicator flashed red. 4% remaining. Enough for 1 cut. Maybe. He looked at Lyra. "Get everyone else moving." "What about you?" "I'll bring them." She hesitated, then nodded. She understood. Sometimes rescue meant trusting someone else. The remaining survivors disappeared toward the airlock. Adrian activated the cutter. The blade glowed bright white. Metal screamed as it sliced into the sealed door. 3%. 2.1. The cutter died. The opening wasn't large enough. Not yet. Adrian threw the useless tool aside. He wedged both hands into the narrow gap. The twisted metal refused to move. He pushed harder. Pain shot through both shoulders. Nothing. Again. Still nothing. Then he remembered his father. During a collapsed subway rescue years earlier, his father had smiled while moving concrete that should have been impossible to lift. Afterward, Adrian had asked him how his father had answered. "You don't lift because you're strong. You lift because someone is underneath." Adrian planted both feet against the wall. Every muscle in his body strained. The metal groaned. Slowly. The gap widened. Just enough. The trapped survivors squeezed through one after another. The last was a young technician barely older than 20. She looked at Adrian in disbelief. "How are you still holding this?" Adrian smiled through clenched teeth. "I'm trying not to think about it." She escaped through the opening. The bulkhead immediately collapsed the rest of the way. The force threw Adrian backward across the corridor. His communicator crackled. "Adrian," the captain's voice. "Corridor collapses in." 23 seconds, Adrian forced himself to his feet. His left arm hung uselessly at his side, probably dislocated. Didn't matter. He ran. Smoke filled the passage. Emergency lights failed one by one behind him. The Asterion began breaking apart. Entire sections disappeared into distorted gravity. Ahead. The Mercy Dawn's open. Airlock glowed like a beacon. The captain stood inside, waiting. Just as Adrian reached the emergency bridge, the blue corridor surrounding both ships started collapsing. Reality itself cracked around them. Stars shattered into impossible colors. Sentinel Nine's calm voice echoed across every communication channel. "Horizon corridor integrity." A pause. Double quotes. Critical. Then, for the first time since they had met the ancient guardian. Its voice changed, almost imperceptibly. But Adrian heard it. There was urgency. "Hurry." One word. Simple. Human. And somehow. After waiting alone for more than 100,000 years. The ancient machine sounded as though it didn't want to lose another human. Adrian leaped. The collapsing bridge beneath his feet dissolved into streams of blue light. For one terrifying heartbeat, there was nothing below him except warped gravity. Then 2 hands grabbed his rescue harness. The captain and the chief engineer pulled with everything they had. Adrian slammed onto the deck of the Mercy Dawn just as the outer airlock doors sealed. A fraction of a second later, the emergency bridge vanished. Not exploded, not collapsed. It simply ceased. The entire ship shook violently. "Captain," the navigator shouted, "the corridor is gone." Outside the viewports, the calm blue pathway shattered into thousands of glowing fragments that disappeared into the darkness of the rift. Without Sentinel Nine's protection, impossible gravitational waves crashed toward both ships. The captain didn't hesitate. Maximum thrust. The old engines roared louder than they ever had before. Every warning light on the bridge turned red. The engineer looked ready to cry. "They'll never survive this." The captain grinned. "They only have to survive once." The Mercy Dawn accelerated. Behind them, the crippled Asterion drifted free of the collapsing corridor. Heavy tractor beams locked onto its hull. The old rescue cruiser strained under the impossible weight. Metal screamed. Bolts snapped. The towing arms bent almost to breaking. Still, they held. Adrian staggered onto the bridge, his left arm secured in an emergency sling. Commander Lyra looked at him. "You should be in the medical bay," he smiled weakly. "I've spent enough time in medical bays." She laughed despite everything. Then the bridge lights flickered. Every screen suddenly filled with static. Sentinel Nine's voice returned. Weak. Double quotes broken. As if speaking required enormous effort. Guardian systems failing. Adrian stepped closer to the communication console. "What happened?" "Energy reserves." Double quotes. Exhausted. The captain stared through the forward window. The enormous ancient vessel had stopped glowing. Its brilliant blue lights dimmed until they were barely visible. For the first time, it looked old, not ancient. Tired, after more than 100,000 years of waiting, it had spent the last of its strength keeping a promise. Adrian swallowed hard. Sentinel, the machine answered after a long pause. Human, thank you. Silence, then. Incorrect. Adrian frowned. You honored the protocol. Its voice became softer, almost peaceful. No life requesting rescue shall ever be abandoned. The sentence faded into static, then came its final words. Mission complete. The blue lights went dark, the gigantic Guardian slowly drifted back toward the heart of the abyss rift. Motionless, silent, like a soldier, finally allowed to rest after standing watch for 112,000 years. No one on the bridge spoke. Even the captain removed his hat. Not because Sentinel 9 had been human. Because duty recognized duty. Hours later, the Mercy Dawn finally escaped the outer edge of the rift. The stars returned. Straight. Bright. Normal. For the first time in nearly 2 days, the crew saw an ordinary sky. A transmission from Galactic Command arrived immediately. This is Admiral Sarek. You were ordered not to enter the rift. The captain answered calmly. I remember. You disobeyed a direct command. I did. A pause followed. Then the admiral asked quietly, How many survivors? The captain looked around the bridge. Doctors were treating patients. Engineers were repairing damaged systems. Exhausted crew members leaned against walls. Smiling for the first time since the mission began, he answered proudly, 73. Silence. Long silence. Finally, the admiral spoke again. I'll be waiting when you return. The transmission ended. 3 days later, every ship in Alliance space gathered above the capital world. Military cruisers. Scientific vessels. Medical transports. Civilian ships. Thousands of them. Not for a parade. For a welcome home. As the battered Mercy Dawn emerged from hyperspace, every vessel activated its running lights at the same moment. A river of light stretched across the stars. The oldest rescue ship in the fleet flew slowly through the center, its scarred hull, its patched engines, its burned paint. Every mark told the same story. Someone had been saved here. Someone had been brought home. And standing quietly on the observation deck, looking out at the countless lights, was the human medic who had ignored impossible odds. Not because he believed he couldn't fail, but because he believed hope deserved someone willing to try. The Alliance expected celebrations. Instead, Adrian asked for one thing. I need access to the historical archives. The request surprised everyone. The council had prepared medals. Interviews. Awards. Entire worlds wanted to celebrate the crew of the Mercy Dawn. Adrian wasn't interested. He couldn't stop thinking about Sentinel 9. A machine had waited alone for more than 100,000 years, keeping a promise no one else even remembered. He needed to know why. 2 days later, he stood inside the oldest archive on the capital world. The building stretched deep beneath the surface, protected by layers of security that had existed longer than most governments. Waiting for him was Professor Elian Voss, the Alliance's leading expert in pre-galactic civilizations. The old historian smiled warmly. So, you're the man who embarrassed every rescue council in the galaxy. Adrian smiled. I've heard worse. The professor led him into a circular chamber filled with ancient star maps. I've spent 40 years studying lost civilizations. He stopped beside a massive holographic projector. And after reading your mission report, I haven't slept. The hologram activated. Thousands of forgotten civilizations appeared. One by one, they vanished. Wars. Plagues. Stellar collapses. Civilizations rose. Then disappeared. Until only one unanswered mystery remained. A blank section of history spanning more than 100,000 years. Professor Voss looked at Adrian. History calls it the Silent Age. No records, no survivors, no explanation. Adrian folded his arms. Until Sentinel Nine. The professor nodded. Exactly. He zoomed toward the Abyss Rift. There have always been strange signals from this region, but every expedition vanished. You were the first to come back. Adrian remained silent. The professor opened another file. It contained only a single sentence recovered from an impossibly ancient satellite. The language had taken decades to translate. Adrian read the words slowly. If the Guardians still stand. Humanity still has a future. He looked up. That's all we ever found. Before either man could continue, every light inside the archive suddenly flickered. Emergency power activated. A technician rushed into the chamber. Professor, you need to see this. What happened? We've detected another transmission. Adrian's heartbeat quickened. From the rift? The technician swallowed. No, from beyond it. The room fell silent. Signals had never come from beyond the abyss. Rift. Nothing was supposed to exist there. The transmission was weak. Broken. Ancient. Yet unmistakably real. Static filled the speakers. Then. A voice. Not mechanical. Human. If anyone receives this. The recording crackled violently. Double quotes. The Horizon Fleet. More static. Double quotes. DIDN single quotes. T fail. Professor Voss stared at the console in disbelief. Adrian stepped closer. The voice continued. We're still here. Silence. Then one final sentence. Don't stop looking. The transmission ended. Nobody spoke, because every assumption the galaxy had ever made about humanity had just been shattered. Sentinel Nine hadn't been guarding a grave. It had been guarding a promised. And somewhere beyond the edge of known space, beyond the Abyss Rift, beyond 100,000 years of silence, someone. Was still waiting to come home. The transmission changed everything. Within hours, every major government in the Alliance declared a Level 1 historical emergency. Not because of a military threat, because history itself could no longer be trusted. For centuries, every civilization had believed humanity was one of the youngest intelligent species in the galaxy. Now. One damaged recording suggested that somewhere beyond the Abyss Rift, humans had survived for more than 100,000 years. The Galactic Council convened immediately. Representatives from hundreds of worlds filled the circular chamber. Arguments erupted before the meeting officially began. It's fake. It has to be. No signal survives that long. The translation could be wrong. Professor Voss stood and placed the recording in the center of the chamber. We've tested it 31 times. The isotopic decay inside the transmitter confirms its age. It is authentic. The room became silent. One council member slowly turned toward Adrian. "You've been beyond the rift. What do you believe?" Adrian didn't answer immediately. He remembered Sentinel Nine's final words. "Mission complete. Not mission failed. Not mission ending. Mission complete." As a medic, Adrian finally said, "I've learned something." The council waited. When someone spends 100,000 years protecting a road, it's because they believe someone will eventually need it. No one argued. For the first time, the council voted unanimously. Operation Horizon would begin. Not a military expedition, not a scientific survey, a rescue mission. The largest rescue mission ever. Attempted. Because if even one human voice was still waiting beyond the rift, then someone deserved to answer. Construction started. Immediately. Engineers from every civilization worked side by side. The new vessel would not be a battleship. It would not carry planet-destroying weapons. Instead, it carried hospitals. Rescue bays, mobile cities. Food production systems. Schools. Everything needed to bring survivors home. Someone jokingly called it the biggest ambulance in galactic history. The name stayed. 6 months later, Adrian walked through the nearly completed ship. Its corridors were wider than city streets. Its medical center alone was larger than most hospitals on Earth. The captain of the Mercy Dawn joined him. "I've been thinking." "That's dangerous," Adrian replied with a smile. The captain laughed. "You know, they offered me command of this ship, and I refused." Adrian looked surprised. "Why?" The old captain placed a hand against the wall of the giant rescue vessel. "Because this mission was never about rank." He looked directly at Adrian. "It was always yours." Adrian shook his head. "There are officers with more experience. There are admirals with better records. There are explorers who've mapped half the galaxy." The captain nodded. "All true. But when the entire galaxy said no, who said yes?" Adrian had no answer. Weeks later, the launch day arrived. Millions watched from planets across the Alliance. Not because they expected glory, because they hoped. Families of the 73 survivors stood together near the launch platform. Commander Lara hugged Adrian tightly before boarding. "You brought us home," she smiled. "Now let's find the ones who never got the chance." As the massive rescue ship slowly lifted into the sky, every siren across Alliance space sounded once, not as a warning. As a promise. Somewhere. Beyond darkness. Beyond time. Beyond history itself. Someone had whispered, "Don't stop looking." Humanity had heard the call. And this time, they weren't sending one medic. They were sending the entire galaxy. Before the launch sequence reached its final countdown, Adrian asked the flight crew for 10 minutes. No one questioned the request. He left the bridge and walked, alone through the enormous rescue ship. The corridors were silent. Thousands of cabins waited for passengers who might not even know rescue was coming. Medical bays stood fully stocked. Hydroponic gardens stretched beneath artificial sunlight. Classrooms sat empty, their walls covered with maps of the modern galaxy. Someone had even built a small park in the center of the ship, not because regulations required it, because whoever returned after 100,000 years would need more than medicine. They would need somewhere peaceful to remember who they were. Adrian stopped inside the primary medical bay. Against one wall sat a simple glass display. Inside it rested the old emergency medical handbook that had traveled aboard the Mercy Dawn for decades. Its pages were worn, its corners were folded. Hundreds of rescue workers had learned from it. The chief medical officer walked in quietly. "We've scanned every page. We can preserve it digitally forever." Adrian smiled. "I know. Then why keep the original?" He looked at the faded cover. "Because people forget something. The information isn't valuable because it's old. It's valuable because someone cared enough to keep passing it forward." The doctor nodded silently. An announcement echoed through the ship. "All personnel report to launch stations." Adrian took one last look around, then headed for the bridge. As he entered, every officer stood. No one had ordered them to. No protocol required it. The captain's chair waited in the center of the bridge. Adrian stopped beside it. "I've never commanded a ship." The executive officer smiled. "Neither did anyone before their first command." A soft laugh spread across the bridge, easing the tension. The launch countdown reached 0. The engines awakened. Not with the roar of a warship, but with the steady heartbeat of a vessel built for one purpose: saving lives. The gigantic rescue ship rose into the stars. Hundreds of escort vessels formed around it. Behind them, thousands more ships flashed their running lights in salute. No fleet had ever left Alliance space this way, not carrying weapons, carrying hope. 3 days later, they reached the edge of the abyss rift. Sentinel 9 remained exactly where Adrian had last seen it. Motionless. Dark. Silent. The ancient guardian drifted peacefully above the impossible sea of distorted gravity. Adrian stepped onto the observation deck. For several minutes he simply stood there. Then he raised one hand in salute. "You kept your promise. We'll keep ours." As if the universe itself had been waiting, a single blue light slowly appeared inside Sentinel 9. Then another. Not enough to wake the ancient guardian, only enough to acknowledge the passing of the watch. The fleet entered the horizon corridor. This time the pathway remained stable. The ancient road recognized those who came not as conquerors, but as rescuers. Beyond the last wall of distorted space, the darkness ended. Stars filled the sky once again. An entirely different sky. No charts matched it. No database recognized it. They had crossed into a region of the galaxy no living civilization had ever explored. The sensor officer suddenly leaned forward. "Captain." Adrian looked up. "What is it?" "I am detecting artificial structures." "How many?" The officer's eyes widened. He stopped to recalculate. Then whispered, "I don't know how to count that high." The main view screen brightened. Far beyond the bridge, thousands of lights appeared. Then tens of thousands. Then millions. An entire civilization stretched across the stars. Not ruins. Not wreckage. Cities. Shipyards. Orbital habitats. Living worlds. And as the rescue fleet emerged from the corridor, every light in that distant civilization turned toward them. A single transmission arrived. Clear. Strong. Undamaged. A calm human voice spoke. "We have been waiting for you." The bridge fell silent. Then the voice continued, "Welcome home." The bridge remained completely silent. No one knew what to say. For nearly a full minute, the only sound aboard the rescue flagship was the steady hum of its engines. Then Adrian stepped forward. "This is Captain Adrian Cross of the Galactic Rescue Fleet." We received your transmission. We're here to help. Another pause. The same calm voice answered. We know. A massive structure slowly detached itself from the distant civilization. It wasn't a warship. It carried no visible weapons. Instead, hundreds of docking ports lined its hull. Medical symbols glowed across its surface in brilliant blue light. Professor Voss whispered from the science station, "Those aren't military markings. They're hospitals." As the enormous vessel approached, thousands of smaller craft emerged behind it. Every one of them maintained a respectful distance. None powered weapons. None locked targeting systems. It was the behavior of a civilization that had forgotten how to expect war. The transmission returned. Our records identify your vessel as a rescue ship. That is correct, Adrian replied. Then you may approach. The flagship slowly crossed the remaining distance. Millions of eyes watched from the worlds beyond. When the airlock finally opened, both civilizations stood face to face for the first time in 112,000 years. They looked human, not identical. Generations of isolation had changed them. They were slightly taller. Their eyes reflected faint traces of blue light. Their technology was unlike anything the Alliance had imagined, but they smiled exactly the same. An elderly man stepped forward. His white uniform carried the same blue emblem that had appeared on Sentinel 9. He studied Adrian for several seconds before speaking. You came. Adrian smiled. We said we would. The old man's eyes became wet. We stopped counting the years, but we never stopped believing. He extended his hand. Adrian took it. At that moment, every screen across the Alliance began broadcasting the meeting live. Entire planets watched in silence. Children on Earth gathered around classroom displays. Doctors stopped surgeries for a few seconds. Firefighters paused between emergency calls. Paramedics watched from ambulance stations. Nobody cared about politics. Nobody cared about borders. Humanity had just found its oldest family. The elder invited Adrian into the central archive. The walls were covered with names, millions of names. Every rescue worker, every medic. Every engineer. Every civilian who had given their life protecting others during the ancient war. Adrian noticed something carved above the entrance. No life requesting rescue shall ever be abandoned. He slowly turned toward the elder. Sentinel 9. Double quotes. Was protecting this promise. The old man nodded. When the war ended, we sent our last guardian to watch the only safe passage. He volunteered. He knew no one might return for thousands of years. He accepted anyway. Adrian lowered his head. He completed his mission. The elder smiled gently. No, he passed it to you. Silence filled the hall. The elder continued walking. We survived because our ancestors believed something greater than victory. They believed that civilizations are not remembered by how many enemies they destroy, but by how many strangers they refuse to abandon. Adrian looked through the great windows of the ancient city. Children were playing beneath trees. Families walked through peaceful streets. There were no statues of conquerors. No monuments to war. Only memorials to rescuers. To medics. To ordinary people who had chosen compassion over fear. The elder stopped beside one final monument. It showed a lone guardian standing beside a gateway of stars. Below it were simple words. Hope only survives when someone answers the call. Adrian smiled. Across the galaxy. Millions of people smiled with him, because on that day, humanity did not become the strongest civilization, but it became something far greater. The civilization that never stopped answering. The end.